Episode 13 of the Consistency Podcast is here. My name is Steve from Gloucester. But for this episode, I want to retitle the podcast the Pick Your Lane podcast in honor of Kirk Minihane and today's Kirk Minihane show from January 2nd, which featured Dave Cullinane and Justin Trudell. And when the show began, didn't you guys think that this was nothing more than Kirky bits? In the past, when he was upset at his producers, be it Steve Robinson or Dave Cullinane, he would come into studio and say, I texted so-and-so and said that I wanted to fire Steve or wanted to fire Dave. And it was the same thing today. He came into the studio and he said, I texted Jeff D. Lowe and said that I want to fire these guys. And you knew right there that he wasn't going to fire Coleman and he wasn't going to fire Gus. Those guys were 100% safe. Anybody who listened to the old Kirk rants about Dave and Steve realized right there he wasn't going to fire them. So as the show began, again, to me, this was the Kirk Minihane greatest hits. He put Coleman and Gus on trial like he did Dave and Steve in the past. He asked them a bunch of questions. He didn't buy any of the answers. He got frustrated, yelled a little bit. And then he asked the in-studio guests to ask questions. In the past, it was Blind Mike. Today, it was Justin and Dave, and they did a great job. And again, Kirk didn't buy the answers that Coleman and Gus gave them. And as usual, we heard Kirk thinking out loud. Should I fire these guys? Should I not? Should I suspend them? Should I not? Again, the same song and dance that we've heard from Kirk in the past. And this show to me was really a nothing burger up until the last 15 minutes when the bell must have gone off in Kirk's head and he must have realized that if he did nothing, it would be another example of his dick being kicked in. And he suspended these guys. And to be honest, I was shocked. I didn't think Kirk was going to do anything. And you have to wonder what will happen when Monday rolls around and if these guys are going to take the suspension seriously. With Coleman, I think he will. Coleman had a better resume than Gus leading into the best of. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. There wasn't a lot of errors. So he did build a good rapport with Kirk. Now, obviously, his producing skills are now in question after an embarrassing best of. But I thought Coleman was more accountable today. He did go in hat in hand. He admitted that he made a lot of mistakes. He was very, very, very understanding of Kirk's position. He took responsibility. And I think he's going to take the suspension to heart. And what I liked about Coleman as well is that he admitted that he has some faults. He said that he needed help with the Twitter account, for example. So again, that is somebody who is admitting to his mistakes. And I think hopefully he'll learn from them going forward. Now, does anybody believe for a second that Gus realizes or believes that he made any mistakes? And does anybody think he's going to change going forward after sitting out for 5 days? I mean, all of a sudden Monday, he's going to show initiative. He's going to show drive. He's going to have this ability to produce a show. He's going to stop lying. I mean, none of this is going to happen. And you have to wonder if suspension was the right thing for Kirk to do with Gus. I mean, obviously he wasn't going to fire him. And anybody who thinks that he fired Cullinane or fired Steve, I mean, that's bullshit. There was a parting of the ways with Steve. There was a parting of the ways with Cullinane. He didn't outright fire either one of them because he would have done that on the spot. So firing Gus wasn't going to happen. But suspension, I don't think that's going to lead to any changes being made. I mean, if Gus was producing my show and I saw that he was making all these mistakes and I knew I couldn't fire him because it would be a bad look, I probably would have called KFC in New York or Big Cat in Chicago, and I would have asked if Gus could have went to either one of those studios and did maybe a week of training. Maybe sitting down with producers from either one of those offices would have helped Gus long term. He could have actually learned how to produce, because up until this point, I don't think he knows how to produce. And maybe being in one of those offices, he would learn how to properly do a rundown sheet, how to properly cut clips, how to book guests, to come up with better sound, better topics. I think that would have probably been a better way to handle Gus. And just suspending him, I don't think it's really going to make any difference, because something will happen again 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, where, again, it's going to be the same song and dance, the same Kirk greatest hits. Should I fire him? Should I not? What should I do with him? I'm disappointed with him. Nothing's going to change. So what's going to happen going forward? And who should we point blame to if something bad happens? And I think the first person that we should stop pointing blame to is me or other people out there that are pushing for Gus to be fired. That is not the narrative. Now, I have definitely picked a lane. And since day one, I have maintained during the producer search that Gus wasn't the right candidate. I sent Kirk a letter. I said, hey, Kirk, I don't think you should consider this person as a producer. Here is who I nominate. I nominated Coleman and a few other people, but I didn't nominate Gus. Then when he got hired and I listened to the first couple weeks or a month of shows, I sent out the infamous letter with the same position. I don't think Gus is the right fit for your show. And it was the trial period, the honeymoon period. And I thought, well, maybe Kirk will give my opinion some thought. But I knew ultimately he wasn't going to get rid of him. But my position never changed. And my position hasn't changed from episode 1 of the Consistency Podcast to episode 13. I've maintained my position. I've picked my lane. I have said and still maintain that Gus is not the right fit for the show. He pulled the wool over Kirk's eyes. It was a complete brilliant disguise by Gus to be hired, and he's done a great job to this point of conning Kirk into keeping his job. But at the end of the day, if he gets fired or maintains his job, that's on him. It's not on me. I shouldn't be held accountable if he gets fired. But I feel like there are people that are pointing their fingers at me and saying, this is what you want to do. You have this narrative. You want to get him fired. You can't blame me for that. That's like blaming a bartender for somebody getting arrested for drunken driving. The person who gets arrested for drunken driving makes the choice early in the night to go to a certain bar. They go up to the bar and they order alcoholic beverages. And to get drunk, obviously it needs to be, multiple beverages. Now, if the bartender poured the alcohol down the person's throat, then sure, they would be accountable for the drunken driving arrest. But ultimately, it's the person who got arrested that is responsible for drinking that amount of alcohol to get arrested. So with Gus, if he gets fired, it's because of the mistakes that he made and the inability to correct these mistakes. It isn't anything I say. It isn't anything anybody else says. It's on him at the end of the day. And if he does better, if he has a complete turnaround, he should get praised for that. Guaranteed. But for someone to say that I haven't picked a lane, and for Kirk especially to say that I haven't picked a lane, is absolutely wrong. I have picked a lane. But while I'm in this lane, don't I have the ability to pick and choose the speed that I want to go in. I mean, I don't want to always go full tilt. I don't always want to have the same agenda. You got to get rid of him. You got to get rid of him. He's no good. I've said as much. He knows my position. But I feel like not being able to soften my stance is incorrect. I'm a human being just like everybody else. I make mistakes. I do it all the time. And I know that Gus is a good guy overall, so I'm not going to take a victory lap if the guy gets fired, and nor am I going to take any responsibility should that happen, nor should I. But I should have the ability sometimes to soften my stance and say, yeah, I would feel bad if you got fired. I would feel bad if changes happen. I mean, there is some castle guilt to me. I'm not an asshole. I don't want to take a victory lap if a guy gets fired. I mean, that's stupid. But for people to say that I'm changing my thoughts on the fly, and I mean, no, I've always maintained my lane. I've always picked my lane. That's never going to change. But I feel the person who has to do that, who has to pick his lane, is Kirk. Because he is notorious for changing lanes. He does it all the time with Rico Bosco. There are some months where he likes Rico, calls him his brother, and there are some times where he calls him his enemy. He doesn't stay in one lane. He doesn't pick a lane with Rico. He's always changing lanes. He's changing lanes with producers, with colleagues. He does it all the time. So for him to point fingers at other people, saying that me and others need to maintain and pick a lane, that's wrong. Kirk's the one who should learn how to do that. So for him to accuse other people, that's the pot calling the kettle black. And that ultimately is on Kirk. He's got to improve on that. He needs to maintain a position and stay with it going forward. And there can't be this flip-flop stuff. And in a couple of months, he can't let the producers slide if they continue to make mistakes. Now, he seems to have picked a lane with the suspensions. It seems like he's taken this more serious. So let's see if he maintains that going forward or if he's going to change lanes. So I was very disappointed at the end of the show today when he said that I needed to pick a lane. And he also said that he's down on me. I don't understand why he would be down on me when I have done nothing to show that he should be down on me recently. It just doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense that I wouldn't be invited into the studio this week on such a pivotal moment with the producer search. I mean, wouldn't he want me in the studio more than the yes men? The people who are going to say, oh, Kirk, oh, it must have took a lot for you to suspend them. Oh, Kirk, you did the right thing. I mean, wouldn't you want somebody else to have a counterpoint? I mean, isn't this the most important week above all? To have somebody else in studio have a different position? I just don't get it. It's just very insane to me that he wouldn't have me in. And I have messaged him privately. I messaged him on the show account. He knows I'm available any day this week to come in. And if he needs help with the show Twitter account, I'll be glad to take over again. But for him to tell me to pick a lane and that he's down on me, I mean, again, this is another one of the Kirk Minahan greatest hits. And he calls me Stevie Bits all the time. But at the end of the day, I kind of think the person and the master of bits is Kirk Minahan. So Kirk, I'm here if you need me. If not, I'll listen to the show like everybody else. I'll have an episode 14 of the Consistency Podcast out this weekend. And until then, I hope everybody has a great week, a happy new year, and I'll talk to you soon.